Hello, everybody. Welcome back. My name is Cam. This is First and 10. This is a continuation on my top 100 board from the other day. We got through numbers 100 through 51, and today we're going to finish out the top 50 here. So once again, I just want to thank you, everybody, for checking out this video. If we've got any returning viewers, thank you guys so much. Your support means everything. If you guys are new here, check it out for a few minutes, see if you like it. And if you do, like and subscribe. That is more than appreciated. But let's go ahead and get into it here. So, starting at number 50, we've got Nick Scorton, edge from Texas A&M. This was paired with Princely Unman-Mielen, the edge from Ole Miss. They were 50-51 here. Again, kind of a who do you want? Scorton's more the physical freak. Actually, did produce quite a bit at Purdue, but he's a little more of the, I suppose, more upside, and Unman-Mielen's more the solid pass rusher. Number 49, though, wide receiver Eric Iomaner. I like Iomaner a lot. I will say his combine numbers were a little disappointing. The agility testings were not what I would have exactly hoped for. I did end up moving him down about 10 spots on my draft board and did switch out or move up Jack Besh over Iomaner. I still think he's a really good player. I think I was just a little bit too high on his player type, and I think a little more realistically is he's kind of a back end of the second round talent of this class. But number 48, this is probably the big one for a lot of people. Shedeur Sanders, quarterback from Colorado. Shedeur is a really intriguing quarterback. He, in my opinion, I guess I'll start out here with why I have him so low. It's the arm talent, first of all. Frankly, that's the big thing. And I think his processing isn't as high and isn't as far along as some people believe. I don't believe it's elite level processing. I think it's more B level processing, if that makes sense. And I think his arm talent is just a little below. It's too far below NFL level for me. It's better than Dylan Gabriel's, but I'm trying to think of a comparison. Like Teddy Bridgewater is a comparison that's been thrown around a lot. I like that comparison. However, I think his arm is weaker. So can we say like Teddy Bridgewater with a slightly worse arm, maybe? And I get that he's probably going to go in the top 3, but I don't fully see it. Now, on the good side of things, I still think being at 48 and the positional value of quarterback, that's worthy of a back-end first-round pick for me. I think if he were to fall, which I have been hearing rumors of, that would be for the benefit, in my opinion. Like if he went to Pittsburgh and could sit a year and just, I don't know, ideally just refine some stuff, maybe he can get his arm talent, he can get his arm a little stronger. Back in, I want to say it was 2009 when Sam Bradford was taken. Actually, 2009 was Stafford. Whatever year Sam Bradford was taken number 1 overall, he had a very below average NFL arm, but by the end of his Rams time, he had worked it up significantly. And I mean, so ideally, Sanders could bump it up a little bit. And I like him. I think he's a fun quarterback prospect, but I just think he's a second-round player or second-round talent in this draft. That's really all there is to it. I'm just not as high on him as some of the other guys. But let's go ahead and move on to 47 here. 47, Quinshon Judkins, Ohio State. Man, I loved Judkins. He was, I believe, my RB6 for a good chunk of the time, but after I really dove into Trevion Henderson, I watched Judkins before Henderson, so I had Henderson higher from default, just kind of from consensus. But once I watched Judkins and Henderson together, I love Quinshon Judkins. He reminds me a lot of Darren McFadden, kind of like in Darren McFadden's third season, after he had gotten injured a couple of times and he wasn't quite as explosive, but he still had a 1,200-yard season for the Raiders that year. I'm thinking of like that version of Darren McFadden. He's so physical. He runs violent. Really explosive. He's got good vision, great ball security. Solid contact balance at 6', 221. That just perfect running back size, in my opinion. I love Quinshon Judkins. He'd be one of my guys in this draft. 2 running backs, Judkins and Tootin, are probably my 2 biggest guys, I suppose. But let's move on here. Number 46, JT Tuimoloau, edge from Ohio State. Just really solid edge. Tuimoloau is pretty polished, I would say. He's solid against the run, good upper body strength, just great size, prototypical defensive end size. Some of his drawbacks, I suppose, would be the athleticism. Not a great athlete, and he lacks a little bend, but really, really solid player. And I think he's got a good, consistent basis here for being a second round pick. Absolutely. Number 45 here, Jack Besh, wide receiver from TCU. I suppose Jack Besh might be another one of my guys. This draft, just the way it's structured, and I've talked about this in my last video, how it's so deep in these rounds, like 20 through 50, 20 through 60 range. I like Jack Besh a lot. He reminds me a ton of Adam Thielen, and maybe that's a little bit of the white guy thing and the white guy comparison, but Jack Besh is super fun. I just think he's going to be a great wide receiver too at the next level, and if he can get his route running polished, which I think he will, I just see that work ethic. I see that kind of that physical, that toughness from him, which leads me to believe that the work ethic's going to be there. Once the route running gets a little more polished, I think he could be like one of those 90 catch for 1,000-yard type receivers for a couple of years in the NFL, make a few Pro Bowls. I like Jack Besh a lot. Number 44, Darian Porter, corner from Iowa State, one of the combine standouts, absolute stud. 6'2", I believe, or it might be 6'3", I don't remember off the top of my head. But he's going to fit really well as long as he goes to the right system. He is a little system dependent. He's absolutely more of a cover 3 corner where he can play in zone coverage and jump routes. But right team drafts him, he's going to be fantastic. 43, TJ Sanders, D lineman from South Carolina. Bull Rush McIntyre, if we've got any NFL Stock Exchange fans out there, one of the best nicknames I've ever heard in the draft, and I hope we adopt that for TJ Sanders full-time. He's a little undersized, but those undersized D linemen are really popular nowadays. You think of Osi Odigizua, Aaron Donald, obviously, but I think Odigizua is kind of the more reasonable comp for TJ Sanders, although Sanders is bigger, and I think he's a little better against the run. But really fun player, and I've flip-flopped him with Derek Harmon and flirted with Sanders in my top 30 on multiple occasions. I would not be surprised if a team... Actually, let me say that. I would be surprised if a team took him in the first round. I have him a little higher in consensus board now that I think about it. I believe he's in the 50s, closer to 60 on the consensus board. But number 42, though, Maxwell Hairston, corner from Kentucky, really similar player to Darian Porter, combine standout. Similar talent level, different scheme, different play style, but similar level of talent compared to their scheme and their play style, which you could pick either or at the back end of the first round. I think of like the Eagles sitting there at 32. Well, they don't really need a corner. But one of those types of teams, just go ahead and let's get an athlete in here. Maxwell Hairston, a little smaller, but he's a little more instinctive in man coverage, and I think he'll kind of play in a more traditional man system, or just more multiple system. Porter's a little more scheme dependent, I believe, but I like Hairston a lot. I've seen him mocked as high as the Vikings at 24 on a couple occasions. But number 41 here, Donovan Jackson, the guard from Ohio State. Now, I feel like I should preface this. The majority of my offensive line rankings are kind of a mixture of consensus and what I hear from analysts and combine stuff, and then just partially gut feeling. It's not my strength scouting. I've been scouting for a few years now, and I feel real comfortable with skill positions, quarterback, but offensive line just kind of another level. So I will say that this is more of a consensus ranking on Donovan Jackson, but from what I've read, just kind of the general ideas of him and what I have seen from Ohio State, because Ohio State did get fairly solid run blocking this season, of course, but he's great size, great play strength. He works well in the zone run game for that size. However, I suppose a negative, what I've heard is that he is a little bit more of a robotic. The feel isn't quite there, I suppose, but I've seen a lot of people have him in their top 30 borderline. I think he's absolutely worthy of a first-round pick, back in first-round pick. So Donovan Jackson, 41. Number 40, Landon Jackson, edge from Arkansas, one of my favorite players in this draft. I'm now realizing how much this 40 through 50 range is. There's just a bunch of my guys. Jackson, Landon Jackson, Maxwell Harrison Porter, Jack Besh, Quinshon Judkins, Eric Eilmaner. There's a lot of my guys in this range. That might be my 50, or that might be my favorite range. If you gave me 5 picks in, like, let's say if you gave me pick 38, 39, 40, and 41 or something like that in this draft and just called it good, I'd be more than happy. I would be so thrilled with that combination. But what was that? Oh, yeah, Landon Jackson, edge from Arkansas. Man, Landon Jackson just looks like a physical specimen. 6'6", 270. You know what? Let me, I want to get his, let me look up his combine information here. I want to get his actual size. And honestly, it might be good to have the NFL Combine site pulled up for this. 6'6", 264, 4.68 40-yard dash, 40.5-inch vertical, 10.9 broad jump. I suppose the thought on this before, now I could tell Landon Jackson was a good athlete based off the tape, but with the consensus on his scouting, he's a great run defender, needs to work on his pass rushing. And, you know, at the bigger size, I thought he'd be frankly just a little slower, and the consensus on him was kind of mid-50s. But I did like him a little more because I think he would have been a great number 2 edge rusher in the draft, pre-combine. However, based off of his performance and the fact that he's at that size, and just kind of the scouting report on him that, he plays with good. By the way, he added 40 pounds in his time at Arkansas, so he's clearly got some work ethic in there. But he's got a good inside rush move. He's a real high energy player, but I suppose he is stiff. He's not really got natural bend. However, when comparing a guy like Landon Jackson to Michael Williams from Georgia, who's top 15 in most people's boards, I don't see that much of a difference there. I guess Williams is a little more fluid athlete, but, if you get the right coaching, Landon Jackson, I theoretically think of the power rush move that could be in there with that size and speed combo. And then with his actual run D ability already, I love Landon Jackson, one of my favorite players. And Arkansas, I believe Arkansas does a good job of putting out quality NFL players relative to the number of guys they put out. I feel like now I'm thinking of Treylon Burks, and that's wiping out my argument, but whatever. We'll stick to it. But let's go ahead and move on to the top. Let's really get into the top 40 here. Number 39, Trey Amos, corner from Ole Miss. I like Trey Amos a lot. Just slightly better than Hairston and Porter. I think that if you were to just give me one, I would take Trey Amos, but I wouldn't be mad with any of the others. I just think he's a really solid all-around corner. He's consistent in zone, but he shows ability to play multiple coverages. I feel like he's going to be really solid. He's just got a little more well-rounded ability to him. But getting into the next set of guys here, I'll pair these guys together. Darius Alexander and Derek Harmon, D tackles from Toledo and Oregon. Different types of players, but these guys are both really fun. I think I have Alexander a little higher than most people, and being above Derek Harmon is probably a shocker for some of you guys who are really into the draft. But Darius Alexander is so impressive, in my opinion, from Toledo. I really like him. He's super versatile. He rushes from all different parts of the field, frankly. And I know there's concerns about his age being 25, but I just think he's going to come in and produce right away. Derek Harmon's a little more flashy, a little more. He's a different body type too. 6'6", 295 or 310. I believe 6'6", 310, right around there. Harmon last year was a great run defender, poor pass rusher, and then this year, great pass rusher, solid run defender. So you don't really know what you're fully going to get there. And I suppose that's kind of why I have Darius Alexander higher. I just think when you measure out their NFL careers, I think Darius Alexander is going to have a long NFL career relative to his age, I suppose. But 36 here, Caleb Johnson, the running back from Iowa. I like Caleb Johnson a lot. Was a little disappointed by his performance at the Combine. He is faster than 4.57 on tape. However, there were just a couple of other things. And just I like some other guys more. I think Caleb Johnson's a little more in the second-round talent range compared to – I had him at 27, I believe, before I ended up kind of adjusting and tweaking some things over. 35, Josh Connerly, tackle from Oregon. No problems with taking Connerly in the first round. I've seen that mocked very frequently. I like him a lot. Just kind of your prototypical end of round one, early day two talent tackle. 34, Azariah Thomas, corner from Florida State. Great in man coverage. That's why I have him a little bit higher than these other guys is I love the man coverage ability. I know Thomas isn't as impressive of an athlete as everyone else, or as the other corners that I've talked about so far today. But he just has really nice man technique, great size. I think he might be a little more boom or bust in that if he goes to a system with a rough defensive coordinator, it might not work out. However, if he goes to the right team, I think he'll be really, really good for a long. I think he could be a multi-time Pro Bowler. And overall, I have him as corner 4 in my well, actually, that would be corner 1. And corner 5, which we'll get into here. I figured that probably makes sense when you guys are thinking about who are the top guys compared to who you can see at 31 there too anyway. So I feel like corner 5 isn't anything crazy there for him, but I really like him. 33, Tyleik Williams, D-lineman from Ohio State. Great run defender. I think he could be he's just going to be a really solid nose tackle or one tech, whatever, for the next 10 years for whoever ends up drafting him. 32, Donovan Ezraku, edge from Boston College. Really refined pass rush moves. I think that he's a guy that can come in and get 8 to 10 sacks, or have 8 to 10 sacks, 8 to 11, 8 to 12 sacks for 6-7 years of his career. Just such a refined pass rush skill set. Not the best athlete, but I think your coaches are just going to love this guy, his knowledge, his ability. He looks like a guy who studies a lot of film, and I like Ezraku a lot. 31, Siobhan Revelle, corner from East Carolina here, a little closer to Thomas. I love Siobhan Revelle. Man, he's got prototypical size, elite athleticism. Kind of like Darian Porter's size and speed with Azariah Thomas's man ability, and then like Will Johnson's zone ability. I would have him as a top 15, top 20 player in this class if he hadn't torn his ACL. I love Siobhan Revelle from East Carolina. Now, let's go ahead and move on to our top 30 here. It's kind of funny looking through these top 30 guys. There's a lot of good players, but I feel like this section of guys isn't as fun as some of the last couple sections. A couple of these guys are guys who I'm not as high on as first-round picks, and guys who maybe have just fallen. Their stock has fallen a little bit post-combine, and not just from the combine, but just as I hear from analysts and watching tape over again and kind of rechecking some of those thoughts and ideas that I previously had on guys. But starting at 30 here, Jalen Walker, the edge linebacker hybrid from Georgia. I see Jalen Walker as a lot more freakier athlete. Hassan Reddick, there's Quay Walker in there. And not to get too hung up on comps, but that's where I see Jalen Walker. I think the top 10 hype is absurd to me. Yeah, like he looks like a good edge rusher, but he's super small. And the linebacker skills aren't as impressive as I believe some people think. And I don't know. This is where I think this is where I think his range is. I think he's a late first round pick. No, don't get me wrong. Tremendous upside, and he could absolutely make me eat my words. But that's just I feel like I'm a little more realistic on Jalen Walker here. I know there are a couple of people out there who've said some of the same things. But 29, Luther Burden, wide receiver from Missouri. Luther Burden is really, I like him a lot. I think he's a little more high risk, high reward as I've kind of come into my evaluation on him. He, regardless of the quarterback play, he didn't look as explosive this season, and he didn't look as into it. And I get, part of that is, because of quarterbacks, but you want your guys to be into it, and I think from what I'm hearing from teams around the league and just Twitter, all that stuff, is that they're a little lower on Luther Burden, and I'm gonna tend to more. I'm gonna trust that. I'm gonna trust that, and I might have seen Luther Burden as a good player, but also some of these other wide receivers I think just have settled in. I'm just higher on them. And I think this is just kind of where I had Burden's true value at, is here at 29, just as I've kind of evaluated guys more. But I still really like him a lot. Any team taking him, I think if the Ravens at 24 really could be a really fun position for him. Chiefs could be great. But yeah, Luther Burden at 29. 28, Malachi Starks, safety from Georgia. Not as fast at the combine as I thought, but still, he's really, really solid. Just an all-around great player, great safety, and you trust Kirby Smart defenders at the end of the day, more or less. And I think Starks settles in here really nicely, kind of at the back end of the first round. 27, Tyler Booker, the guard from Alabama. Everything I've heard about Tyler Booker is, despite the fact I think his tape is solid first round, back into the first round tape. Everything I've heard about him is the character is incredible. The work ethic's there. He's a great dude, and you love the guy. And I have a good feeling Tyler Booker is going to work out, and I might end up moving him a little higher. I suppose some of the things with this tape, he might be a little bit more early second round tape than late first round tape, but you trust the character stuff with him. I trust those reports with him, and that's the kind of guy I'm willing to take a bet on. So I love Tyler Booker here. 26, Mykel Williams, edge from Georgia. Maybe not as surprising, kind of as you guys have been hearing me talk through this. I like Mykel Williams a lot. He's a great athlete, but I think there's similar kind of debates between the Trayvon Walker thing a couple years ago. I think people kind of originally said Mykel Williams was like what people thought Trayvon Walker was. But then, then there's Landon Jackson, who's not too far down, who's like 95% of Mykel Williams. I don't know. You get him in the right system, and being in the back end of the first round here, he's probably going to go to a really good team. Or you know what? Actually, I'm sorry. He's probably going to go a lot higher than this. So we'll see. If he gets to the right guys, though, and develops, he will be a multi-time Pro Bowler. 25, we've got Colston Loveland, tight end out of Michigan. Great receiving threat. Tyler Warren is more of the George Kittle, and Colston Loveland's more of the Jimmy Graham. Great deep threat ability for a tight end. A good route runner, frankly. Not a great blocker. That's really, I feel like you can kind of see the projection there. 6'6", 250, great athlete. Like Colston Loveland a lot. 24, Gray Zabel, guard out of North Dakota State. As I said with offensive linemen here, my rankings aren't fully, there's a little consensus, a little gut feeling. North Dakota State just puts out dogs into the NFL on the offensive line, and I'm just going to trust that Gray Zabel is another one. I think he's going to end up moving into center, maybe guard, but I think center would be a really fun position for him. And if that's the case here, I think he would be top 25 on most people's boards if you view him as a center. He shouldn't play tackle. I have him listed as an interior offensive lineman, even though he played tackle in college. Most of the time, I'll list them with both if I think that they're going to transition. But I think Zabel is just a pure center guard at the next level. However, I really like him. He's super fun to watch. In the little bit that I have seen from North Dakota State, he's just a dog, frankly. But number 23 here, Shamar Stewart, edge from Texas A&M. Freak athlete from the combine. And, that might be kind of my difference between where I'm at on consensus and some of these other guys is like the freak athlete edge rushers. I'm a little bit lower on, and I like the more polished guys a little bit more, at least relative to value sakes. Shamar Stewart killed the combine, and God, I mean, he, like the Myles Garrett-esque combine performance for Shamar Stewart. I'd have to see where they measure up, but I bet it was pretty close. But yeah, he's a freak. The concern, 3 sacks over the last 2 years. He does get after the quarterback at a decent rate, 16%, which is about average. That's what you want. Relative to how many sacks he got. He does get pressure on the quarterback. He just doesn't finish. So, you hope he can get into the right system and get that stuff refined, and his upside's incredible if he does. 22, Matthew Golden, wide receiver out of Texas. Golden, man, running the 4.29 40. Incredibly impressive. Now, I will say, he doesn't run a 4.29 on tape as great as he is. However, I think everyone's getting a little more excited about Matthew Golden, and the more I think about it, he's good. And I do wonder why he didn't see the field until so late, but I guess you just have to factor in Isaiah Bond probably earned some of that from the start, just from, the name and just the thing that Isaiah Bond was when he came into Texas. But man, I like Golden a lot. I kind of have a little gut feeling on him too. But let's go ahead and move on here. Number 21, Josh Simmons, tackle from Ohio State. Simmons has interestingly gone down a little bit in some of the consensus board. I think Simmons would be a top 15 player if not for the knee injury. His 6 games this season were phenomenal. He allowed 1 pressure in all 6 games that he played, or 5.5 was it, I suppose. But yeah, in all those games, 1 pressure the entire season. It's insane. I think Arizona at 16 still a pretty realistic fit for him, to get a guy opposite of Paris Campbell and just get those Ohio State tackles back together. But yeah, Josh Simmons, really, really interesting guy. Let's move on to the top 20, though. Nick Emanwari, safety from South Carolina. He blew everyone away with his combine performance. Really fun. Freak athlete. I'm trying to think of the comparison here. You remember Obi Melifonwu out of UConn, who just had an insane he's the only body type or just like size speed profile from safety that I can even compare him to, but he's a way better player. So he could be a top 15 pick, and he's already shot up draft boards. I remember Daniel Jeremiah was very early to this, mocking him to the Eagles at 32 back in like January, and people were like, what the hell is he doing here? Which I think is kind of funny, but Daniel Jeremiah is really tapped in. 19, Jahad Campbell, linebacker from Alabama. A little more of an old school backer, but one of my favorite players, excuse me. Number 18, Emeka Egbuka, wide receiver from Ohio State. I think at the end of the day, I've really settled in with Egbuka as wide receiver 3 in this class. He's so solid, and there's some Jackson Smith and Jigba comparisons. I think he's more athletic than JSN was, and obviously we've seen what JSN has been able to do in year 2. I have a real good feeling about Egbuka, and I feel like some people are underrating him just from maybe the fact that he's just been around for a while, and there's kind of that recency bias thing with some of these other guys, but I think he's a top 20 player in this class. Number 17, though, another fun one here, Cam Ward, quarterback from Miami. This is more so just about where I see Cam Ward in I mean, this is my top 100 big board. This isn't mock draft. This is in relation to the class. Where do I see Cam Ward? And I see him right where I saw like Justin Fields. I think back, or honestly, about where I had Jaden Daniels last year, Michael Penix last year. Kind of in that range, they would have been, mid-first round talents. And that's just frankly where I would fall Cam Ward in. Like if I didn't need a quarterback and I'm just taking BPA, all of the guys that I would take ahead of Cam Ward, that's really just how it is. But I still love it. I would still take him number one if you need a quarterback. I don't blame Tennessee or New York whatsoever for doing that. He's absolutely, in a quarterback class where there's no worthy quarterbacks, he's, of course, worthy to be taken number one overall. Let's move on here, though. Number 16, Kenneth Grant, the 340-pound D lineman from Michigan. A lot of Dexter Lawrence comps. He's not quite Dexter Lawrence. The main concern with him is the inconsistency. But he's still, when he's on, he is a freak, and I hope he can just get it tuned in the NFL, because if he does, he's going to be a fun one for a long time. And any team that ever needs a nose tackle, you're always going to hear at around the trade deadline. If he ends up going to a bad team, you're always going to be here, team trying to flip for Kenneth Grant to get run defense support, for their Super Bowl push. And obviously you don't want Kenneth Grant to go to a bad team, but I feel like Dexter Lawrence was in that situation forever with the Giants. But moving on to number 15 here, Kelvin Banks, the tackle from Texas. He's awesome. He's awesome. I think he could end up going in the top 10. Probably he's my number 2 tackle in this class. I technically still have Will Campbell listed at tackle, but I'm going to go ahead and qualify him as an interior offensive lineman kind of from now on. I think I've more so solidified that that's where I want him to play at the next level. I'm still absolutely fine with trying him out at tackle, and we haven't even gotten to Will Campbell yet, so I'll kind of save that for when we get to him here in a minute. But number 14, Walter Nolan, D lineman from Ole Miss. Walter Nolan's another guy that I just kind of have a feeling on. Could absolutely make me eat my words, because Ole Miss pass rushers or Ole Miss D tackles are, I don't know, I just think of Robert Kimdiche. But Walter Nolan, really athletic, shows a real pass rush upside, and, great size, great athleticism. I believe he was the number 1 recruit in the country when he came out. And I think you could take him in the top 10, and I honestly wouldn't have a problem with it. I think I'm a little higher on him than most people are too, but regardless, Walter Nolan 14 here. Number 13, Jahdae Barron, corner out of Texas, number 3 corner in this class. I love Jahdae Barron, and he, again, had an amazing combine. Super impressive, and I love what he brings to the table. 12, James Pierce, the edge from Tennessee. I still am not really sure where I'm gonna keep James Pierce at. I resorted back to putting him around 12 here because I do kind of believe those weird combine questions were more or less nullified, and I'm just gonna trust my gut with what I've seen. He's lower on a lot of people's boards, but I don't know. I'm just gonna trust my gut and trust that his upside is gonna pan out. And, just kind of until I hear otherwise, I'm keeping him right around where I've had him this whole time. Or I'm just going to leave him here. Number 11, though, Ted McMillan, wide receiver from Arizona. 6'5", super explosive. Man, he's going to be fun. I wonder where he goes. I wonder if he goes to the Saints or... he could go to I wonder, where's his ceiling? Is it the Raiders at 6, probably? Maybe New England at 4 if Travis Hunter goes before then. I don't know, but I like McMillan a lot. I wish his run blocking would be a little better. His route running's a little inconsistent. So there's some boom or bust there with him. He's not Drake London. There are a lot of... Actually, I believe I even threw out that comparison early on, kind of just from... looking at this, just from purely looking at him, just the size and kind of profile. That was my thing, but I think London was a little more polished of a route runner, and McMillan's more explosive. That's going to be my kind of thing there. So that does come with a little more boom or bust in McMillan, but regardless, I still like him a lot. But let's go ahead here and get into the final top 10. Okay, so number 10, Will Johnson, corner from Michigan. Mike Green, edge from Marshall. Will Campbell, tackle, IOL, interior lineman, LSU. Hampton, running back from North Carolina. Mimbu, tackle from Missouri. Tyler Warren, tight end from Penn State. Mason Graham, interior D lineman. He's going to play, D tackle from Michigan. Ashton Jeanty, running back, Boise State. Abdul Carter, edge from Penn State. And Travis Hunter, the do-it-all corner wide receiver from Colorado. I'll be a little more brief with these guys because I feel like everyone already knows everything about these guys. Will Johnson, I did scoot down from my top 50 board just a couple of spots as the concerns about his athleticism have made itself more apparent. And it is noticeable on tape. You worry about that with the injury. He could play safety at the next level, but regardless, I still really like Will Johnson. Mike Green, the edge from Marshall, he's my second favorite edge rusher in this class. I just think he's so polished, like near 23% win rate as a pass rusher. Actually, I believe it was 21.9 now that I think about it, but Mike Green is, he had 17 sacks. And Marshall, he's a little smaller, but he looks the part, frankly. He looks the part of a top 10 edge rusher. I love Mike Green. Will Campbell at number 8 here. I think this is kind of where I'm going to fall on him. He's more back into the top 10. I think a good spot for him is the Bears at 10 in a mock draft kind of situation. If he ends up, which he probably will play interior lineman for them at some point. Number 7, Amarian Hampton, running back from North Carolina. The gap between Hampton and Jeanty is closing a little bit for me as Hampton's just so solid, do-it-all running back. I think he just doesn't get talked about as much because he's just not as exciting. And understandable, but I love Hampton, and he is a top 10 player in this class, absolutely. And moving to our next player, we have got Armand Mimbu from Missouri at 6. Destroyed the combine. 20 years old, came in an inch taller than he was listed at Missouri. He probably, I'm assuming he grew because I don't know why teams would ever list someone shorter than what they actually are. He is so good, and frankly, I wouldn't be mad if the Patriots took him at 4. I think he just shot himself up here as the clear-cut best tackle in this class. Tyler Warren at 5, everyone to do it all tight end. I want to see him play quarterback and run wildcat, running back, and get 150 targets every season. He needs to be Taysom Hill with 100 targets on offense. That's my ideal Tyler Warren role. Mason Graham, number 4, did come in a little smaller than some people thought at the combine, but I'm not worried about it. He looks every part of a blue chip player on tape, so I'm going to trust the tape there. And size isn't realistically what we've seen. Size isn't that much of a concern from D tackle. Weight at least as long as you can get leverage. Number 3, Ashton Jeanty, I almost said clear-cut best running back after I went on my spiel on Hampton. The best running back in this class. I still think Jeanty is a guy who could have a 2,000-yard season in the NFL, if the situation aligns. One of those types of players who just has that explosiveness and ability to have a 2,000-yard season. I don't want to get too ahead of myself here, but he could end up going to a team where they keep they keep the count low on him in his rookie season. But Dynasty Leagues, I would take him number 1 overall in everything and lay my Hall of Fame bets down on Jeanty. But number 2, Abdul Carter, edge from Penn State. Same deal. I just think really blue chip edge rusher, Penn State. There's some Mike Parsons comparisons. I think as an edge rusher, as an actual pass rusher, the similarities are certainly there. He doesn't play linebacker like Parsons did, but Carter he just looks every bit the part, and I think he might fall in the draft if the top 2 quarterbacks go 1 and 2, as it's been kind of noted there. And whoever gets him, if he potentially falls to 4 or 5, is going to be thrilled. But lastly, number 1, Travis Hunter. Of course, I think I just think the upside of his I suppose, transcendence kind of just beats everything out in this draft. I've debated Abdul Carter and Hunter at 1 for a while, but you feel good about Hunter. He said some weird stuff. I don't like the thing he said with Otani because, I mean, baseball is the most difficult sport in my opinion. That was kind of ridiculous, but that doesn't mean anything draft-wise. He's just kind of a cocky player, and, it is what it is, but I think that's going to turn over into being a great player on the football field. But that does wrap up my overall top 100 here. Thank you guys for watching. Sorry it did take so long to come out. I just ended up liking a lot of these guys, and I just wanted to talk about them for a little longer. So it just took me a little longer to get everything through. But once again, if you're still here, I appreciate it. Appreciate all the support. Like and subscribe if you enjoyed it. And take care, guys. Have a great day.